Hello and welcome to this week's boys basketball version of the Court Report. I'm Keith Schweigert, joined by LMP sports writer John Walk, and we're getting you ready for the PIAA playoffs, which begin this weekend. John, we've got 5 Lancaster-Lebanon League teams participating in the state playoffs. Lebanon, McCaskey, and Hempfield in the Quad A bracket, and Lampeter, Strasburg, and Elko in Class AAA. LS and Elko tip it off Friday night, while the 3 Quad A teams will get started on Saturday. What can you tell us about their first round matchups?
Well, I'll start in Quad A, where we have Hempfield, McCaskey, and Lebanon in action on Saturday. That's the first round for Quad A. Hempfield going up against Chester. Chester is a 8-time state champion. They most recent won it all in 2012. They did miss the PIAA playoffs for the first time in 23 years last year, but they seem to be clicking at the right time of the year. I think they come into this game having won 18 of 20 games, and they have a 6'7" senior Marquise Collins averaging 11 a game. They also have a 6'9" guy who's committed to NCAA D1 Delaware State, and they have another guy named Stanley Davis who's a D1 Morgan State commit. So Chester is absolutely stacked across the board, all starting 5. So Hempfield has their work cut out for them there. McCaskey and Abington Heights, I actually like the Red Tornadoes' first round matchup. We know last year McCaskey obviously lost in the district quarters and then made that run the whole way to the state semis. They did so last year, I think, by beating the District 1 champion in the first round. This year's opponent in Abington Heights, I don't think stacks up a similar challenge. It should be a little bit easier. Granted, it is the state playoffs, but just a couple things to watch out there for Abington Heights. They have a 6'11" junior forward, Seth Maxwell, and 6'9" senior forward and a 1,000-point scorer, Timmy Toro. So those are the 2 guys that really lead Abington Heights. So while we usually talk about Kobe Gantz and Randolph Speller and Ricky Cruz getting things done offensively, they're going to have to do that. But on the defensive end, look to McCaskey, 6-foot center Greg Nunez. He plays a lot bigger than he normally does, and I think we should probably most likely see a lot of minutes off the bench from their 6'6" reserve William Joseph coming in there to kind of defend those 2 big guys. If they can do that, I really see McCaskey getting passed out of this first round at least. Lastly, in Quad A, Lebanon going up against Plymouth Whitemarsh. Plymouth Whitemarsh has won 10 of its last 11 games. They most recently beat Chester, which is Hempfield's first round opponent. And Plymouth Whitemarsh, their strengths there, they have a 6'4" senior center and a 6'2" senior center as well. And one of those kids is a D1 rider commit. They also have a 6'6" kid and a 6'2" kid coming off the bench. Pretty much everybody that plays for them is 6'1" and up, so they're really tall. Lebanon, I don't really like their matchup here. I don't see them making it out of the first round there. Moving on to AAA, where we have Lampeter, Strasburg, and Elko. AAA again starts Friday. I think both games are at 6 o'clock. No, Lampeter Strasburg's playing at 6. Elko's playing at 7:30. Anyway, Lampeter Strasburg going up against Berwick. Berwick is an interesting team because their coach came in about 4 or 5 years ago. That team had won maybe 5 games, and I don't know, over the course of 3 seasons, this coach comes in, turns the program around. They think they were 2-21 just 2 years ago. Wow. And Berwick is in the state playoffs for the first time since 1980. So I kind of feel like, I don't know, maybe they're a team that might like to be happy just to be here. And plus their roster isn't all that daunting. They have a 6'4" senior forward, Tyler Evans, who averages 21 a game for them. But outside of that, they don't really have anything beyond that. And none of their players are all that tall. That Evans kid at 6'4" is their tallest kid. So LS with Ben Sandberg and Matt Akili and a strong supporting cast. I like the Pioneers being able to come out of the first round there. And then Elko going up against powerhouse Newman Goretti. Elko, first ever trip to the state playoffs, has to travel to basically Newman Goretti's backyard here. And Newman Goretti has a 6'3" senior Zane Martin, who is a D1 Towson commit, and a 6'2" senior Rasheed Brown, who is a D1 Florida Gulf Coast commit. So I don't know how the Raiders are going to stack up there. They have a daunting challenge. But again, Elko drew defending district champ Steel High in the first round of districts and moved past them. So perhaps that gives them a little bit of confidence. And a few years ago, as a colleague pointed out to me, Newman Goretti was upset by a Ronnie and Butt coach Donegal Indians team.
That's right.
So Newman Goretti isn't unbeatable per se, and Elko is kind of on this historic run. So I'm not sure if I like their matchup, but just kind of keep that in mind. And lastly, down in Single A, thought we'd give Lancaster County Christian a shout out since we haven't talked to them all year. Chatted with their coach yesterday. He brought back 2 starters from last year's state qualifying team, but last year they kind of backed into the playoffs after Impact Academy shuttered its doors, and LCC was called at the last minute saying, hey, could you play in the state tournament for us? This year, LCC, very strong team in their conference. They ended up being the 3rd seed out of District 3. They are playing really well, but they go up against a team in Constitution that has won 3 of the last 4 state titles. One of those was up at AA. They're back down in single A now, so just to kind of give you an idea there. And Constitution, they're pretty tall across the front. They have a 6'5" junior and a 6'8" senior and a 6'5" sophomore. And Lancaster County Christian coach Nate Long was telling me their strength all year and their undersized league has been relying on their 2 big guys who are both 6'2". That's the tallest they go, but he knows that strategy is not going to work. What do they play? Friday. So he's going to try to slow it down a little bit and not really push the pace, which kind of goes against their thinking, but they're hoping to kind of spread out the floor a little bit and make those big guys come out and defend them. But yeah, out of all of those matchups, I think I like McCaskey and LS coming out of the first round. It's going to be a tough challenge for the rest of the teams.
All right, well, we'll see how it works out. Thank you all for joining us, and thank you, John. For more details on all of the first round state playoff games, be sure to follow Lancaster Online on Facebook and Twitter. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time.